Welcome to Narrative Crusades and the Know Your Enemy series. This will be a rapid-fire what can this detachment do style video where we quickly review the detachment, what tricks to look out for when playing against it. Your friend has just turned up and said, oh, by the way, today I'm using Stampede and you don't have a clue what that means. This is your quick reference video. So, regardless of when you watch this video, we will be giving away combat patrols or the equivalent each month. We'll also be running a campaign. Head over to our Discord for details. Onto the video. The army rules. As a member of the Death Watch or perhaps any other race looking to survive against the Tyranids before they get eaten, what do you need to know? Firstly, their synapse rule means that they take their battle shock tests on 3d6 if they are within 6 inches of a synapse creature. Nids are not going to be failing their battle shock tests. Also, once per game they can use their shadows in the warp. This is an army-wide battle shock against you. It will be used in your command phase. You cannot stop it by using an insane bravery because of the sequencing. It may cost you the game, so you need to keep that in mind when considering particularly your home field objective if some casualties mount up. What is the detachment rule for Stampede? It's called Enraged Behemoths. What it means is their monsters get better as the game goes on. So look for their big monsters. It's +1 to hit if they are wounded. It's +1 to wound if they are below half strength. Again, it is monsters only. It is effectively the Sisters of Battle rule, but for monsters in the Tyranid army list. It is not immensely strong because most of the time you will probably kill 1 or 2 monsters, ideally leaving maybe 1 injured as you run out of assets. But again, that does depend on the situation you find yourself in. So just be aware that a couple of pot shots might not be the best idea if there are 3 Carnifexes about to slam into your really hard melee unit. You're only going to make it worse for yourself. What are the enhancements? As always, there are 4. None of them are hugely standout choices. None of these are going to cause you any gotcha moments. The monstrous nemesis is a problem if your vehicles get into melee, as 5s are likely to become 4s to wound you. So just consider that. Worth noting, by the way, only the Hive Tyrants and the Tervagon are characters that are monsters, so only these 2 units, well, the Flyrant as well, can take these 4 enhancements. Secondly, we have a fight on death on a 3+. There's nothing you can really do about that. Most of the time, I don't think your opponent's going to bring it because you're paying points for something that's probably not going to happen anyway. The null nodules, 5+ feel no pain against psychic once per game. I mean, maybe if you're Eldar, you're going to be worried. Most of the time, again, we're not going to be too worried about that. Ominous presence, +3 objective control for a monster is worth noting if you think you're going to be contesting on objective. But again, most of the time, it's not going to come up for you. So here, playing against Tyranids, the enhancements, not too scary so far. The stratagems, they do have a couple of nice stratagems. What can we play around? Firstly, they all cost 1 CP. So there's no looking at their stratagem pool, their CP, and thinking, oh, they've got 2 CP, they can use that really big one, I can knock them down to 1 somehow. Nope, doesn't matter, they're all 1 CP. Savage War makes hitting Tyranid monsters in combat harder. This is going to be important to think about if you're trying to take down a close combat monster with your own close combat, and then suddenly you think it's a dead sure bet because you're hitting on 3s, and now you're hitting on 4s, or worse than that, maybe you're hitting with a dreadnought that's damaged on 4s, suddenly that's becoming 5s. So just consider the fact that it could be -1 to hit. If you fail a battle shock test as well, it's also -1 to wound. So that does add a bit of survivability to a few of the monsters. Swarm guided salvos makes it easier for the Tyranids to hit you. So if there's some kind of modifier you're relying on, for example smoke, or the native -1 to hit on some vehicles like a venom, or some other stratagem that you're planning on using, they can do things to ignore that. That might make the difference between a vehicle surviving and a vehicle dying that you were pretty sure was going to be fine. Corrosive Viscera lets a unit auto-activate its deadly demise. Not too much planning around to consider here. think about spacing out your units a little bit. If a D6 monster like a Tyrannofex suddenly finds itself running into the middle of your army because you built yourself a nice little castle, because every unit might suddenly take D6 mortal wounds. Massive Impact is quite good in that it deals out of phase mortal wounds. On average, you're going to be taking 3 mortal wounds if a monster charges you. Not huge, but good to know that it can be done to you. It's like a worse tank shock. Untrammeled Ferocity, that can be something you're going to want to play about. It's not going to come up very often. It means that a monster can move through your units as if they are a friendly unit, but they need to end up outside of engagement range. That means if you're putting a big string of Imperial Guardsmen 1 model deep, 1 inch from a Carnifex to block it, it can just walk over you. So you do need to keep that in mind. Keep a bit further back, because then it becomes mathematically impossible, or double rank your troops so that it can't be done at all. And finally, Rampaging Monstrosities is a 5-phase ability. That means that the monsters can re-roll their attacks when they're hitting you. It means they might kill you a little bit quicker. So overall, no real gotcha strats here at all. The summary is, for CP, Nids can be harder to hit in melee, they can shoot a bit better, sometimes they might explode. Do remember the Hive Tyrants can throw out stratagems for 0 CP in a similar way to a Space Marine Captain. What potential combos might they throw our way? Well, first off, there aren't any huge ones. The Tyrannofex, the Exocrine, if you chibble away at them, are going to be getting +1 to hit, so you really want to hit them really hard, or maybe not at all. Carnifex Brood with an old one is going to be getting something from this in terms of the fact that they might be using strats more efficiently. They're going to be getting +1 to hit relatively quickly. The Flying Tyrant might become a little bit more dangerous, and I think Morlocks and Trigons in your backline, if they manage to get one of those in there and you cause a wound or two, suddenly they've got a large amount of attacks and they're hitting like Custodes. Just want to be aware of that if your opponent decides to bring some. Closing thoughts, not as horrific as before. No longer will the Crushing Stampede ruin your weekend. There's no huge tricks. I think it's a really good fun list to bring. If my opponent put this on the table, I would be thinking, yeah, this should be quite a fun game. Good on you for bringing something maybe a little bit subpar and maybe not top tier. Maybe quite good actually to be considering if you're playing with your friends. That your Tyranid army is way better than theirs. How can I tone it down a little bit? I think Crushing Stampede's a good shout. Again, the second campaign pack is downloadable. Everyone has access to the campaign. Patreon members have access to an extended version. It contains missions to play and a number of ways to play them. It also includes some unique upgrades and gives you some opportunity to provide feedback on your own games. We will try to include your heroes of the hour as the campaign progresses. Thanks again to our Patreon members for all your support. We'll continue our monthly giveaways. This month we're giving away 3. Please leave a like, please leave a subscribe, and we will be covering all of the new Tyranid detachments. Thanks for listening.